We're diving deep into one of history's most underrated civilizations, ancient Philippines. Now, I know what you're thinking. Philippines? Isn't that just the country Spain colonized? Well, yes, but here's what they never taught you in school. Hey, history lovers, quick favor before we start. If you enjoy today's video, please help me reach 500 likes and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing historical stories. Before 1521, before any European ever stepped foot on these islands, the Philippines was home to sophisticated kingdoms, master navigators who crossed entire oceans, warriors so fierce that even Spanish conquistadors feared them, and traders who dealt with China, India, and the Arab world as equals. This wasn't some primitive backwater waiting to be civilized. This was a thriving, complex civilization with its own writing systems, legal codes, and incredible achievements. And yet, most of the world, including many Filipinos themselves, know almost nothing about it. Why? Because 333 years of Spanish colonization systematically erased this history. But we're about to bring it back. So let me set the stage for you. The Philippines is an archipelago of over 7,000 islands in Southeast Asia. It sits at the crossroads of major maritime trade routes, between China to the north, the Spice Islands to the south, and mainland Southeast Asia to the west. Whoever controlled these islands controlled the flow of goods, ideas, and wealth across Asia. And the ancient Filipinos, they didn't just live on these islands, they dominated the seas around them. By the 10th century, that's the year 900 CE, the Philippines had established kingdoms that traded directly with Imperial China, the Srivijaya Empire, and various Indian kingdoms. Archaeological evidence shows Chinese porcelain, Indian goldwork, and Arab glassware scattered across the islands. These weren't gifts or tributes from superior civilizations. These were trade goods, bought and sold by Filipino merchants operating in the international market as equals. In 1989, something incredible was discovered, a copper plate that completely changed our understanding of ancient Philippines. The Laguna copper plate inscription, dated to 900 CE, is written in Old Malay and Sanskrit. It records a debt forgiveness and mentions multiple rulers, a sophisticated calendar system, and legal procedures. This single artifact proved that ancient Filipinos had writing, laws, and complex governance systems 600 years before the Spanish arrived. But here's where it gets really interesting. Ancient Philippines wasn't a single unified kingdom. It was a collection of independent barangays, think of them as city-states, that formed alliances, traded with each other, and sometimes went to war. Some barangays were small, just a few dozen families. Others, like those in the Kingdom of Tondo, near modern Manila, had thousands of people. The major powers included Tondo in Luzon, which became a massive trading hub, the Rajanati of Cebu in the Visayas, which would later meet Ferdinand Magellan, the Kadatuan of Madjaas, also in the Visayas, and in Mindanao, the Sultanate of Sulu and Maguindanao, which converted to Islam in the 14th and 15th centuries and became maritime superpowers. Each of these kingdoms had its own culture, customs, and political systems, but they all shared certain things: incredible seafaring expertise, a strong warrior tradition, trade networks that spanned all of Asia, and a decentralized political structure that made them incredibly difficult to conquer. In fact, this decentralized structure is exactly why The Spanish struggled to control the Philippines for over 300 years. You couldn't just capture a capital city and declare victory. You had to defeat hundreds of independent communities, each with its own leader, its own warriors, and its own fierce desire to resist. And in the Muslim South, the Spanish never fully conquered them. The Sultanate of Sulu remained effectively independent until the Americans arrived in 1898. That's almost 350 years of resistance. Now, let me tell you about the people themselves. Ancient Filipinos weren't just warriors and traders. They were extraordinary artists, master craftsmen, poets, and innovators. They worked gold with techniques so advanced that when Spanish colonizers saw Filipino craftsmanship, they immediately shipped Filipino goldsmiths to Mexico to work in Spanish mines. They wove textiles so fine and beautiful that they became luxury goods in Chinese imperial courts. They built ships called barangays that could cross open oceans without using a single metal nail, held together by wooden pegs and plant fiber. They carved rice terraces into mountainsides that still function perfectly after 2,000 years, engineering marvels that rival anything in the ancient world. They developed herbal medicines that Spanish doctors admitted often worked better than European treatments of the time. And their social structure? Way more progressive than you'd think. Women could own property independently, divorce their husbands if they wanted, and even become leaders and rulers. Some women served as babaylans, spiritual leaders, healers, and priestesses who advised rulers and performed sacred rituals. They were powerful, respected members of society. Here's the crazy part. When the Spanish arrived, they were genuinely shocked and horrified by how much freedom and respect Filipino women had. Spanish priests wrote letters back to Spain complaining about it. Ironically, Spanish colonization actually reduced women's rights and status, not expanded them. Let that sink in. The Golden Age. By the 14th and 15th centuries, ancient Philippine civilization was at its peak. Kingdoms were wealthy, trade was booming, the arts flourished. Filipino merchants sailed to China, Java, Borneo, and Malacca. Gold, pearls, and exotic products flowed through Filipino ports. The archipelago was known across Asia as a land of skilled craftsmen and fierce warriors. Some historians call this the Golden Age of Philippine civilization, and they're not wrong. This was a time when Filipino kingdoms held their own on the world stage, when Filipino culture was distinct and vibrant, when the islands were connected to the wider world, but still independent and powerful. But then, everything changed. When the Spanish established their first permanent settlement in 1565, under Miguel López de Legazpi, they didn't just conquer territory, they waged total war on Filipino culture itself. They burned pre-colonial texts written in Baybayin, the native script. They persecuted babaylans as witches and had many of them killed. They forced conversion to Christianity and outlawed indigenous religious practices, calling them devil worship. They replaced Filipino rulers with Spanish governors. They rewrote history to portray pre-colonial Philippines as primitive and savage, justifying Spanish colonization as a civilizing mission that saved Filipinos from darkness. Within just 2 generations, most Filipinos couldn't read their own ancestral script. Oral traditions were forgotten or lost. Sacred sites were destroyed or converted into churches. Ancient artifacts were melted down or shipped to Spain. And for 333 years, Spanish colonial education taught Filipinos that their history only began when the Spanish arrived, that everything before was darkness, barbarism, and savagery. It was one of history's most successful and devastating cultural erasures, an entire civilization's achievements almost wiped from memory, and that's exactly why we need to talk about it. That's why this series matters. The promise. But here's the good news, and it is good news. Over the past few decades, historians, archaeologists, and anthropologists have been piecing together the true story of ancient Philippines. Archaeological discoveries, careful analysis of Spanish colonial records, Chinese historical texts, and the oral traditions that survived colonization, all of these sources are revealing a picture of a civilization far more advanced, far more complex, and far more impressive than we were ever told. And Filipinos themselves are reclaiming this heritage. Baybayin is being taught in schools again. Traditional crafts are experiencing a renaissance. Young people are getting tattoos in ancient styles. The story of ancient Philippines is being told again, and this time it's being told accurately, with respect and pride. And that's what this 30-day series is all about. Over the next month, I'm going to take you through every aspect of ancient Philippine civilization. We'll explore their kingdoms and their wars, their art and their culture, their beliefs and their customs, their triumphs and their tragedies. We'll meet legendary warriors like Lapu-Lapu, who defeated Magellan. We'll learn about cunning rulers who played empires against each other. We'll discover brilliant craftspeople whose work still amazes us today. We'll sail on their ships, read their inscriptions, understand their worldview, and see how they built one of Southeast Asia's most fascinating civilizations. This isn't just Filipino history, this is human history. It's a story of innovation, resilience, and cultural achievement. It's a reminder that every corner of the world, every culture, every civilization has contributed to our shared human heritage, even when those contributions have been overlooked, ignored, or deliberately erased. Now, before you go, if you enjoyed this deep dive into ancient Philippines, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button right now. It really helps the YouTube algorithm show this to more history lovers who'd appreciate it. People, thank you